We're going to review the two-patient load. Going to be removing the stretcher first, and AMC are going to be going to see the patients. We'll advise aviation as soon as we can that we are going to have a two-patient load. Hopefully we know ahead of time. We can do this at the base and get everything configured there. A lot of times this is going to happen at the scene due to lack of resources and or just ability to move patients quickly, as it might be like an MCI thing, like a Pine Lake tornado, or even just multiple MVC, and again, lack of resources. Aviation will most likely be doing this if we are on a scene, but there's no reason why our medical crew shouldn't know how to do this as well. We're going to be removing everything from the side that we can and putting it up on the number 1 and number 2 seats and stowing it where we can. So the gray mesh we end up putting underneath where the headset is. You can take the headset out, as you're most likely going to need that for the patient. The ultrasound, we're going to stick right at the right between the 2 seats, number 1 and 2, and just sitting it right there. Or you can put it on the number 2 seat for right now and find a place for it. You're going to want to remove the pediatric kit, as it's going to get stowed underneath the number 2 seat or number 1 seat. And if you have the physician kit with you, you're going to need to do it as well. You remove the locking collar from the number 3-4 seat, pull the legs up, and secure it to the side wall. As you see, one thing that you're going to have to be concerned about was that fire extinguisher, and we'll show you that afterwards. When you go to put in the mount for the head mount for the 1402, you're going to need to make sure you put it on the pre-marked lines. If the lines aren't there, they should be there, and you should ask engineering about it, and or look at doing it in the aircraft and making sure the lines stay. Just with multiple floor cleanings, those lines will be obscured sometimes, so you just need to make sure they're there. Make sure that the locking pins are engaged in the brown line, and make sure that that is secured. Now you're going to remove the 1402 stretcher from the wall bag. Inside the 1402 should be a baggie that has a blanket, a sheet, and sometimes a towel. The bag will end up being stowed in the back clamshell door, so you know where it is. The 1402 is just not in two pieces, but is bent. And what you need to do is you need to straighten it out. Make sure it is absolutely straight before you engage that. Make sure you do not put your fingers in that middle piece, as you're going to end up catching your fingers and pinching them. Slide it across. That now makes it a rigid board. You can use this for a backboard itself, or you can place a backboard on it. It does have the shoulder straps and chest straps, as well as 2 leg straps. You will need to have this stretcher not in a semi-Fowler's, but you'll need to have it absolutely totally flat in supine, as when you go to load up, and you'll see here shortly that the patient's head will hit that fire extinguisher, as I stated before. As you're loading it up, you'll need to load it first before the other stretcher, because there's not a lot of room and there's really small rollers on the bottom of that. You're going to engage it into the locking pins in the front. The locking mechanism in the back, it doesn't actually lock, it just holds it into place so it does not move from side to side. Then you will load the second patient. The patient that's on the stretcher should, in my opinion, should be probably the most critical one, because you will have access to them by the medic at the head and also have access to the monitors. The other patient is going to be on the floor and a little bit harder to access. Also, when you get to the hospital, it'll be easier to take that stretcher out and get the patient moving into the hospital, and otherwise you'll need a second hospital stretcher in order to put our 1402 on. You can disengage the Philips monitor from that side wall and move it across so that you have better access to the Philips monitor on the other side. Find a place to mount it or put it on, secure it to the patient with the straps, as I do not believe that it is certified there on the legs of the 3-4 seat. You'll need the green oxygen tree out of the middle bag, number 1 side, to secure it to the wall. Make sure you are putting it on the oxygen source, not the 50 psi source. Again, the 50 psi source should be marked with red tape, as Carolyn will show here shortly. The other thing that you may want to look at doing before you get the patients in is moving the ventilator to the overhead mount and then moving the actual monitor, the ProPack monitor, to the ventilator mount. That way you have access to it. As you saw there with the ride-along that we had for the day, her head is very close to that fire extinguisher. If you had the patient in semi-Fowlers or the head of the stretcher lifted up in any way, they would end up hitting their head against that, as you can see in this picture right here. Now we're going to talk about the heavy patient load. You're going to want to remove the mounts for the regular stretcher. Hopefully, again, you will know about this ahead of time so you don't have to leave your main stretcher at a hospital somewhere or at the scene. You will put the mounts in underneath the gray bag for the ultrasound, as well as putting the pediatric bags in there, as the 1402 has already been removed. Again, the pediatric bag and the physician kit could potentially get put underneath the 3-4 seat as well. You're going to need to grab the heavy patient straps out of the number 1 clamshell door. In this bag, there are 2 sets of straps, 2 short straps and 2 long straps that have a buckle. The aeromedical crew and aviation will be setting this up together. My opinion is, and you'll see different people who want to do it different ways, it doesn't really matter as long as the stretcher is secure. My opinion is we should have the shorter straps at the top that is going to secure it there and be able to tighten the bottom straps to the foot end of the stretcher. You'll also note here that the 3-4 seat has been moved up just because the locking collar and the legs would be right close to the patient and you may not be able to sit there. You may decide to leave the stretcher or the 3-4 seat down, but again, that's going to be very close to where the patient is and you probably won't be able to sit there anyway. As you can see, Carolyn is securing the top of the stretcher with the short straps to the brown line. Sometimes you may need to wrap it around more than once in order to make sure that it's tight and secure up at the top. Now for the longer straps with the buckle, again securing it in the brown line, wrapping it around the frame of the stretcher, and then tightening up the buckle. This allows for patients who are a little bit wider of girth, but still able to get in the aircraft with the weight limits provided. Again, these patients are going to have to be fairly stable. You can lift them up into a semi-Fowlers in this position, but the access to their airway and to their head and to their side of the patient with medications running, IVs, that sort of thing, is going to be quite difficult. And here you see that it's secured up at the top and also at the foot end. If you needed to ventilate this patient, this is somewhat what it would look like with the patient's head there. Somebody's going to be bent over and potentially unstrapped at least at the shoulders in order to ventilate the patient.